You have tuned in for my top 10 mothers of horror list, dedicated to women in horror who love their children so much it's deadly, or never really understood how mothering works. If you enjoy this video, consider clicking that like button and subscribe for more content. Also be sure to comment with your top 10 mothers of horror. But now, let us begin. At number 10 is Catherine Kinsolving. Catherine Kinsolving, played by Rosemary Murphy, is the main antagonist in 1972's You'll Like My Mother. A cold woman, she pretends to be her recently deceased sister-in-law Maria when Maria's pregnant daughter-in-law Francesca comes to visit for the first time following the recent death of her husband who was stationed in Vietnam. Not only has Catherine illegally moved into her sister-in-law's home, she's using it to hide her psychopathic son Kenny from the law. Kenny is a fugitive on the run wanted for rape. Though that displeases his mother, it's not enough to make her want to turn him in. She protects and keeps him hidden from Francesca while not so subtly encouraging him to not assault her. While she shows love and concern for her criminal son, she mistreats her youngest child Kathleen and treats her like a slave. While Kathleen is mentally challenged, she's still a bright and compassionate young girl despite her mother's mistreatment of her and having a sadistic rapist for a brother. Catherine has no qualms with murder, even ordering her daughter to murder Francesca's baby after faking its death when she goes into labor. But Kathleen hides the child instead. Catherine will go to any lengths to protect her son, including allowing him to kill or assault a mother and her newborn baby and his own sister, if it means she keeps her precious son. No matter how you look at it, this is just not good parenting. At number 9 is Danica Ross. Danica Ross, played by Rebecca Romijn, is the main antagonist of 2019's Satanic Panic. Fashion designer by trade, her wealth and power come from her recreational activity as the leader of a satanic coven. Highly proficient in the dark arts, her sorcery is unmatched, but she won't be winning any Mother of the Year awards. Danica had a daughter, Judy, but Judy was only conceived for the purpose of offering her as a sacrifice when she was of age, so the demon Baphomet could use her virgin womb to give birth to himself. When Danica learned her daughter had had sex to save herself from her fate, she found no use for her daughter and promptly ordered her execution. Danica cares only for power and wealth. She has no loyalty to anyone but herself and will kill anyone for any reason she deems necessary. Sadly, a miscalculation on her part led to the slaughter of herself and her coven by the demon Samaziel. At number 8 is Dr. Martha Thomas. Dr. Martha Thomas Nee Baker, played by Desiree Gull, was the aunt of Peter and Angela Baker in 1983's Sleepaway Camp. Divorced from her husband, she was a single mother to her son Ricky. An often chipper and family-oriented woman, it's possible she suffered from bipolar disorder or a manic mental condition. Though flighty, she had strong personal morals and was a devoted family woman with a cheerful demeanor. When her brother, his daughter Angela, and his partner were killed in a boating accident during a 4th of July weekend, Martha took in her surviving nephew Peter. However, Martha already had a son and longed for a daughter, and from that moment raised Peter as his twin sister Angela. Though it was never implied she ever physically abused Ricky or Peter, the psychological damage done to Peter being forced to not only identify as a girl but as his own dead twin resulted in the boy having not only a serious identity issue but turned him into a serial killer at a young age who targets immoral individuals. Really hope her ex ended up getting sole custody of Ricky after this. At number 7 is Bathsheba Sherman. Bathsheba Sherman, played by Joseph Bashara, is the main antagonist in 2013's The Conjuring. Said to be related to Marytown Estey, a woman executed for witchcraft during the Salem witch trials in 1692, Bathsheba married a rich farmer named Jetson Sherman and shortly afterwards gave birth to her first child. A week later, she sacrificed her newborn baby to the devil. When caught by her husband in the act, she ran from the home, climbing the tree in the backyard, proclaimed her love to Satan and cursed any and all who would take her land from her, then proceeded to hang herself. Over the years, the spirit of Bathsheba kept true to her word. For 100 years, her spirit would possess the mothers of the families who resided on homes on her land, and would use the mothers to kill the children and then force the mothers to kill themselves, really solidifying that she does not like children at all. Do not invite her to your baby shower. Eventually, her spirit was sent back to hell after she targeted the parent family in 1971, which resulted in her being exorcised from the home and land by Ed and Lorraine Warren. I imagine she raked up quite the kill count over her 100-odd years in the possession business. At number 6 is Michelle Crane. Michelle Crane, played by Danielle Basutti, is a secondary antagonist in 2013's Insidious Chapter 2. Also known as the Woman in White, she was the mother of Parker Crane, who became known as the Bride in Black. Michelle was an insane and violent woman whose main victim was her innocent son Parker. Michelle hated that she had a son and spent Parker's informative years forcing him to pretend to be a girl, giving him the name Marilyn. Failure to play his part resulted in violent punishment from his unstable mother. Dying at the age of 37, it is strongly believed Parker killed his mother due to the abuse he suffered. His suffering and long-term physical and psychological abuse turned him into a cross-dressing serial killer whose victims consisted of women. Trapped in the further as a spirit not at rest, she continued to torment her dead son even in the afterlife until finally having her spirit sent to hell. When they say your mother will always be with you, Michelle took that expression far too seriously. At number 5 is Margaret White. Margaret White Nee Brigham, played by Piper Laurie, is the main antagonist in 1976's Carrie. An abusive religious zealot, most of her religious beliefs are of her own making, focusing primarily on modesty and chastity to an unhealthy and unrealistic level. An emotionally unstable woman who suffered from untreated mental illness, she was raped by her drunken husband and conceived her daughter Carrie, then raised the daughter she never wanted alone after her husband left her. Carrie grew up to be emotionally, psychologically, and physically abused by her mother, often for benign or assumed reasons, which greatly impacted Carrie's mental well-being and development. When Martha learned of her daughter's telekinetic abilities, she became convinced her child was a witch and therefore must be killed. After Carrie went nuclear at her prom, she was greeted by her mother as her mother appeared to comfort her. She stabbed her daughter in the back with a butcher's knife while reciting the Lord's Prayer. Carrie killed her mother in self-defense using her abilities, and the two perished together in their home after it collapsed on them from Carrie's abilities. Martha was never a woman suited for children, but she was definitely suited for some hardcore therapy and possibly some antipsychotics. At number 4 is Debbie Loomis. Debbie Loomis, played by Laurie Metcalf, is the main antagonist of 1997's Scream 2. A loving and devoted wife and mother, she abandoned her husband and son when she found out her husband was having an affair with their son's girlfriend's mother. After she learns her son became a murderer and was killed by his girlfriend and daughter of the woman who she blames for ruining her life, Debbie plans her revenge. Starting with a head-to-toe makeover, she teams up with psychopath and film student Mickey Altieri, who she meets online, and then takes on the alias Debbie Salt to get close to Sidney Prescott and her friends. She murdered Phil Stevens as a representation of Stephen Orth from the events of Scream. She then killed Casey C.C. Cooper as a stand-in for Casey Becker. She then killed Randy Meeks after he had some unpleasant things to say about her son. Debbie was cunning and spent the entire events of Scream 2 planning to kill Sidney by framing Mickey for everything. Eventually, her emotions became her undoing, and she is killed by Cotton Weary and her corpse shot by Sidney just in case. You could say homicide ran in the family in this case. While she wasn't the best person, you have to feel a little bad for her. Her husband cheats on her, then she finds out his infidelity and her leaving her family turned her son into a serial killer, which then led to his death. Regret and grief can make you a little knife happy, I guess. And number 3 is Baroness Grabs. Baroness Grabs, played by Giovanna Galletti, is the main antagonist of 1966's Operazione Para, also known as Kill Baby Kill. A baroness living alone in the Carpathian village of Carmingham, she has been grieving the death of her daughter Melissa for 20 years. Melissa was trampled to death while fetching a bull during a drunken festival, and the baroness blames the villagers for her daughter's death. Unconsolable, her servants sent her younger daughter Monica to Germany for protection, fearing the baroness to be too unstable. Monica grew up with no memory of her mother. Using magic, the Baroness summoned the spirit of her dead daughter to kill the villagers one by one. When she is reunited with Monica, she makes no attempt to stop the spirit of Melissa from trying to kill Monica, showing the Baroness's bloodlust to be too strong now. The Baroness is eventually killed by the village witch Ruth, who strangles her to death, but not before the Baroness stabs Ruth in the chest with a fire poker. As the two die together, having killed the other, Melissa's spirit is laid to rest, and the villa now free of the Baroness's curse. While I feel bad for her loss, blaming people for an accident they had nothing to do with is taking things a bit too far, especially goes too far when you're willing to kill your long-lost daughter for absolutely no reason. Methinks the woman snapped. And number 2 is La Llorona. La Llorona, real name unknown, played by Marisol Ramirez, is the main antagonist of 2019's The Curse of La Llorona. La Llorona was a beautiful woman who lived in Mexico in the 1600s. She was happily married with 2 sons and lived a happy life. After her husband left her, consumed with jealousy and rage, she drowned her 2 sons in the river. Once she realized what she had done, she was so consumed by grief she drowned herself in the river in hopes of being reunited with her children in the afterlife. Instead, she is forced to walk the earth in search of her lost sons. Those who hear her cries are marked for death. Always in search of children to replace the children she lost, those she finds meets the same fate as her sons, as if she is stuck in a cycle, repeating her final act that made her into the malevolent spirit she is. Forged from rage and grief, she is believed to be responsible for the deaths of countless children over the last couple hundred years, with her number of victims being unknown. Though she was defeated by the Garcia family, it is implied her spirit is not completely gone. As any judge would say, should never involve children in marital problems. Drowning your kids is no way to handle your husband leaving you. And number 1 is Pamela Voorhees. Pamela Voorhees, played by Betsy Palmer, is the main antagonist of 1980s Friday the 13th. Pamela didn't have the best life. As a teenager, she married a violent drunk much older than herself and became pregnant at 16 with her son Jason. It's unclear whether her husband left her after learning she was pregnant, or if at some point in their marriage she took an axe to his head. After all the abuse, I like the murder option. Pamela was a lovely young woman and she loved her son. Though he was born deformed, she loved him just the same, and the two had a very strong bond, becoming the center of each other's worlds. Pamela became the cook at Camp Crystal Lake and she had her son join the camp. One day in 1958, the children bullied and taunted poor Jason and he drowned, not only due to the children's cruelty but the negligence of the camp counselors who were busy having sex. A year after her son's death, Pamela murdered a couple of camp counselors as they were having sex in vengeance, deeming them responsible for Jason's death. No one suspected Pamela and the camp was shut down and the killing stopped. Whenever people tried to reopen the camp, Pamela would poison the water or burn the cabins to stop them from reopening it. But when the camp was reopened in 1979, old wounds were too, and Pamela returned to the camp to slaughter the counselors one by one, still blaming them for Jason's death. With everyone dead and only one left standing, Alice Hardy gets the upper hand and decapitates Pamela, leaving her the only survivor of Pamela's vengeful reign of terror. With 10 known kills under her belt, maybe even more, Pamela Voorhees is a prolific serial killer, no doubt about that. She's smart, cunning, and was active for 20 years without ever getting caught, and her motives were pretty understandable. But at the end of the day, she was a devoted single mother who just loved her son and wanted justice for what happened to him, and she never got it, so she had to get it for herself, in a messed up way. Rest in peace, Pamela. And those are my top 10 mothers of horror. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you're interested in more videos like this, by all means give my video catalogue a peruse and see what you think. Remember to comment below with your top 10 mothers of horror. Would love to hear from you. That's it for this video, but I hope to see you in my next one. So until then, bye!